When I looked at this episode over a year ago, I found it to be a bad episode. It has a paper-thin plot, it has a shoddy understanding of historical research, and it fumbles its morals. Let's see how much my opinions have changed in a year or whether I've dug in my heels. We open with a livestream protest where Penny Proud and friends are in a jail cell. It is here where we get our first moral drop. Without truth, there can be no justice. Keep this in mind when they break their own moral later. Then we get a flashback to a week ago, with Maya and her family. Maya is an insufferable prick, but one of her fathers, Barry, is related to Christian A. Smith, the founder of Smithville. Keep in mind that this series takes place in California. Since Barry is related to Christian A. Smith, he'll be featured as a speaker for the renovation of the park. At school, Maya runs into a girl named Emily, who seems a bit lost. They enter Maya's history class, where we end up getting a lecture about how Christian A. Smith was this great humanitarian. The teacher, Miss Brady, basically calls out Maya for talking in class. Emily is a ghost girl, so basically Maya seems to be talking to no one. So Miss Brady goes on a tirade about how Maya can't be related to Christian A. Smith after Maya says she is related to Christian A. Smith. Even pulling the card, the whole, oh, you're adopted, that's not your real family. Speaking as a biology teacher, you know that Miss Brady is going to get dragged kicking and screaming to admin after this. Emily has Maya ask what crops were grown on the Smith family farm. This strikes a nerve with Maya when she learns that cotton was grown on the farm. Yeah, that farm isn't just a farm, it's a plantation. But Maya's subsequent attempts at finding more information on Christian A. Smith comes up inconclusive. While searching the dark web, and apparently they discover that Elon Musk is actually an alien on the dark web, any information on the founder of Smithville is unavailable, even on the dark web itself. But hey, let's talk to the omniscient ghost girl right here. They find a diary in the flower bed of the park, and it basically spells out that Smith was a slave owner. Then we get a history lesson about how the Emancipation Proclamation only applied to Confederate states and how Lincoln's end goal for slaves was to deport them. More on this nonsense later. Reactions amid the supporting cast immediately denounce Lincoln. When confronted about this, Barry is hesitant to accept this. He's presented as wrong here because, as far as they're concerned, all information about Christian A. Smith points that he's a great humanitarian. Maya, on the other hand, randomly found a diary in a flower bed and just thumps it like an evangelical preacher thumps the Bible and tries to have him see the light of her preaching. We even get product placement for white fragility. Woohoo. After that product placement, Wizard Kelly, the mayor, told brother Kwame off-screen, yeah, this guy's a moronic history teacher who probably learned history from Facebook, to get over slavery because that was 400 years ago. Maya, who probably sleeps with that bullhorn, immediately grabs it and orders a protest. They intend to protest Wizard Kelly's rededication of the park. Right as he is publicizing the event, they are coming in hot with bullhorns and picket signs. Wizard Kelly's response is to immediately attack them with the police. Okay, one of the most hilarious things about this scene, it's supposed to be dramatic, but it is frickin' funny. The other father Maya has, I think his name is Randy, tells Barry to use his white privilege to help their daughter. Okay, that's just hilarious. Then we get the scene at the beginning of the episode, the protest in the jail cell. Then we get our other moral drop. Pretending something didn't happen doesn't make it go away. A supporting character by the name of Igloo manages to get everyone out on bail, but everyone actually refuses to leave until their demands about the Smith statue and the town's name, or rather renaming, are met. Then it immediately cuts to 1 month later. That's stupid. The town is renamed Emilyville, the ghost girl grows up and fades into butterflies, the end. The moral of not whitewashing history is one that should be taught. After all, plenty of people believe that the American Civil War wasn't about slavery, despite plenty of evidence to the contrary. The problem is that the Proud family, like many of its morals, bungles its morals so badly either by making and attacking straw men, or by ultimately breaking their own morals at the end of the episode. I get the concept of being a cartoon, so details need to be exaggerated in order for specific concepts to work, but I honestly feel like the idea of Christian A. Smith's history not being on even the dark web, it kind of feels cheesy for what they're trying to preach. I much prefer if they did what the New York Times did with their textbooks, the whole shaded by partisan politics bit. It's a project that basically compares textbooks between Texas and California, and how details will be obfuscated and omitted based off of where they're going. Obviously, they're not culling the dark web of this information, but they are making small omissions in order to paint a different narrative. Think about your favorite or least favorite movie for a moment, and imagine how different the movie would be if they simply cut out a small scene, or a plot relevant scene. That immediately alters the flow of the narrative. It's the same concept because ultimately history is a narrative. Speaking of states, remember when I brought up that Smithville is in California, and by extension all of the Proud family takes place in California? When we think of slavery, we immediately jump to plantation slavery because that's what a good chunk of the Confederate States were. Slaves grew cotton and tobacco, slave owners were planter aristocrats. That's not how California's slavery panned out. Slaves during the California Gold Rush were there to look for gold on behalf of their masters during the 1840s and 1850s. Yeah, free state, but good luck trying to stop slave owners from slave states from bringing their slaves over to California to go pan for gold. There's also how America's original sin of maltreating Native Americans was up and center during this time. Yeah, Native Americans could be enslaved, forced to dig for gold, or be victim of a series of massacres that we collectively call the California Genocide. Do I think defaulting to plantation slavery is an attempt to show or completely ignore the gold rush or California's genocidal history? No, not really. At least I hope not, because pretending something didn't happen will make it go away would seem pretty, to use the term they're using now, sus of them to go through. Then again, this tries to take a very black and white approach to Lincoln as wanting to simply deport all the slaves after the war, which is stupid. Lincoln's friendship with Frederick Douglass made him basically give up the idea of just simply deporting all the African slaves and having them live separate lives from the white people in America. I just think the show is lazy and uninspired, trying to push this out for a quick buck. Let's not forget this. In the middle of their autism episode, they wanted to play Make for Reference with all these IPs Disney owns. For the episode saying date in your own race, don't marry outside your race in the guise of a dangers of colorism episode, they were more concerned about the characters dressing up like various princesses. Let's be real here. This episode is lazy, and probably the epitome of their laziness is how everything around the diary plays out. The moment it says, oh, Christian A. Smith was a slave owner, everything goes to hell for the episode. This book is not treated like it's a primary source that challenges the orthodoxy of Christian A. Smith, the great humanitarian. No, it's treated like divine revelation from God. Anyone who disbelieves it is an unbeliever and must be destroyed. Hey, fool, have you ever tried to corroborate evidence found in this book? We have plenty of books in real life that are just polemics or were clearly written in case the emperor got deposed and the writer clearly wanted to keep his head. I think we can agree that Justinian isn't a demon who walks around the palace gardens headless. Any other people wrote or alluded to Christian A. Smith being a slave owner? Anyone? Anyone? Were there any slave graves on his properties? I mean, I'm sure there has to be some kind of slave grave. This is Research 101. Corroborate your evidence. But no, this episode treats the discovery of a diary akin to a prophet getting a divine revelation from God. And frankly, that's insulting to God, angels, and squid. One of the questions that came up while watching this was, how is a slave able to read and write? Frederick Douglass, as his life as a slave, ran into the issue of literacy because slaveholding Maryland didn't allow slaves to become literate. I don't doubt that there were literate slaves, but they would be few and far between, especially if the master was actively as antagonistic as this book seems to imply Smith was, and thus hiding the diary and any materials such as pencil and paper would be of utmost importance for the slave. Then there's this whole Smith was a great humanitarian bit that bothers me. The moment we discover he's a slave owner, we never hear about this part again. I get what they're trying to do here. They are trying to say that you can't be a slave owner and a humanitarian. I agree with that concept, but like I said in my original video, I think it would be far more interesting if you chucked out the ghost girl with divine revelation for Maya. Have Maya grow and learn to like Christian A. Smith on her own, and be proud to be descended from him. Maybe even try to emulate her activism style from him. That way you can make him a great humanitarian for black people, which makes her only want to emulate him. But through research, we see that he may have been nice to black people, but that doesn't mean kindness would translate to other races such as Slavs, Jews, and Chinese people. Then she would need to grapple with these conflicting ideas that her idol also did a lot of massacring. That, however, implies that Maya is a character who needs to learn a lesson. Maya as a character, as depicted, is a social activist who only exists to talk down to other characters. I'm sure had the show gotten a season 3, she probably would tell a genocide survivor that they're privileged that their genocide wasn't efficient or that their genocide got publicity. It's tradition for this channel to hand out musical hell-style sentences for the Proud Family videos. Let's do that now. For mistreating children and getting away with it using the police, Wizard Kelly is sentenced to being robbed by the Joker in the most over-the-top way possible. For essentially claiming to be a prophet, Maya is sentenced to the Spanish Inquisition. For being a prick to adopted and mixed-race children, Miss Brady is sentenced to getting punched by All Might. For having no understanding of history, Brother Kwame is sentenced to being beaten up by the Kwames. That's it for this video. Please consider liking, subscribing, tipping the channel on Ko-fi. This is Cyril signing off.